Now, I'm sure all you know about the skyrocketing lumber prices from here to the eastern fringes to Athelloren itself. But what we don't consider is the massive amount of wood elves that now go without their favorite choice of armor. Now, this would be a problem, wood elves coming out and riding in the streets, but it's actually kind of hilarious because now they're A, naked, B, can't afford the picket signs to actually picket, and C, now are more easy to punch than ever. So, yeah, fuck them.
Consequently,
Welcome, everyone.
today's episode is sponsored by Athelloren Lumberyard, because their business really took off when Icket Claw took over the business. And also Picket the Icket, while a catchy union formation slogan turns out doesn't work if you can't afford picket signs.
Yeah, and don't have the armor to avoid chain guns.
Yeah, that too. That was...
Anyway, welcome everyone to BBSPN, local Blood Bowl podcast. I am Josh, and I'm here with my co-host Ayli.
Hello.
And today, we're not going to talk about the entirety of Death Zone. That would take way too much damn time, and to be honest, it's a Blood Bowl supplement, so not all of it really qualifies mentioning. But we were going to talk about the highlights, what we think is approval or something that might be consistent enough to add to your roster or to your inducements whenever you play next. So starting off, infamous coaches. Ayli, you said something about Eileen, ironically enough. What the hell does she do?
Yeah, so... Also, first off, good on them for adding more infamous coaching staff, because only having like one or two in the core rulebook was kind of lame, not gonna lie.
Only two, and...
But basically, she's 100K. So the way that she works, she's functionally a lot more than that because you have to have journeymen on your team. So you're actually playing down by a fair amount already. But her whole shtick is making your journeymen like actual players. So you roll a d6 for each, applying a -1 for each journeyman, and you apply a -1 modifier to the roll for each journeyman taken on. On a roll of 1 or less, they don't have the loner 4-up trait. So just straight up, you can spend your rerolls no matter what. On a 2 through 5, they get a single randomly selected skill from one of their primary skills. And I'm assuming on a roll, it means a roll of natural 6, because it says on a roll of 6, but that's actually impossible on a d6, because if this is proccing, you always have a -1 at least.
Mm-hmm.
They get 2 randomly selected skills from their primary skill category, and then they count towards their CTV as normal. They don't increase, their value does not increase for the skills that they have. And then at the post-game sequence, you can still buy that journeyman, but at an additional 10,000 gold pieces per skill. So, like, if you get, like, a journeyman with block, you're getting them at a discount already. Because I'm pretty sure, I don't think randomly selected general is 10,000. That seems way too cheap. But...
It's 20,000 for a skill that is primary.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind, though, even though the initial cost for those players aren't added to the team value initially, they are added to your team value after you've recruited them. So don't think that you're getting these for free.
Yeah. But it's...
Right.
It's very aggressively costed for what's going on, and also, like, if you're 2 or 3 games into your league, and you have an MNG plus, like, or you just have, like, 2 players down a game, you might already have this. Like you might be able to actually get this early on. This can kind of actually be, like, a big pick-me-up. I don't know. I like Eileen. I like what she's doing. These are the kind of things that we need in Blood Bowl.
Yeah. Next up is a brilliant coach with an even more brilliant name, Papa Skullbones. He's going to be an infamous coach for our Nurgles and Nurglings.
Because Nurgle needed more stuff.
100K grants you random mutations. Granted, unlike Eileen, who at a roll of 1 is just a simple, regular journeyman. If you roll a run for Papa Skullbones special ability, you can KO your own units, so be careful. But, Chaos Gods willing, if you do roll well, you can gain random mutations. There's a random mutation for each roll, save for one and two. Two just means that you choose a different player to roll on the mutations table again. And they get to keep that mutation for the drive. That being said, almost all mutations work to your benefit. So, especially with a Nurgling teams that start off relatively skillless, this is a good bonus. This is something to look into for 100k, especially if you're playing down, which I assume you would take a 100k inducement for.
He's actually 80k too, so he's
80K?
you're a little more likely to get him. If you're specifically playing Nurgle, I really like this guy. I'm not as big a fan. I like him for different reasons on like Skaven, because Skaven can also take this guy because it's Underworld Challenge and favorite of. Oh, it's any favorite of actually. So this could be really funny on like Chaos Chosen. I'm not sure I like this on early Chaos Renegades. I think early Chaos Renegades, this guy's really weird, but it could be funny. I don't know. This guy's just funny. He's just a blast.
And that pretty much makes it for the infamous coaches. Now, on to Wizards. Lord, the Wizards that they have brought into this game have matched the aesthetic that Blood Bowl was going for.
I can hardly contain myself about the one I want to talk about.
Yeah. Please go ahead with our Gabo friend, because I know you want to talk about
Goblin Shaman. So for starters, the Foot of so he's got two spells. He's got Foot of Gork and in parenthesis Ormork, continuing that. It's not quite 20 years old, but like the joke of nobody actually knows which greenskin god is which. And Spore Cloud. He's the only wizard in this book, I think, who has a spell that goes up on a 2-up instead of a 3-up. Almost every wizard had both the spells go up on a 3-up. Spore Cloud doesn't. So Spore Cloud is funny on a 2-up, the chosen player, and you pick this at the start of any opposition team's turn. You target a standing player anywhere on the pitch, and you roll a d6. On a 2-up, they get the loner 5-up and really stupid trait, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
Because, like, imagine that you do this to, like...
any vital component of your team. Blitzers, especially.
War Dancer?
Yeah.
Hello? Doing it to a thrower is funny, but, like, the only thrower that's... there's the Skaven 2-up thrower, and he might not actually be good, and then there's the human thrower. So, like, I guess doing this to the human thrower is funny. Doing this to a ball carrier of any kind is hysterical. Doing this to a killer blitzer is really funny. Making your opponent babysit a player can just be nightmarish. But then we've got the greatest spell. I have cast this so many times in Age of Sigmar and Total War Warhammer. Or I guess in Age of Sigmar it's the Fist of Gork, but that's different. No, it's not. It's the same thing. What am I saying? The Foot of Gork or Mork. You roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, the targeted player doesn't do anything. And this is, like almost all the wizards, this is on your opponent's turn, either at the start of their turn, or... A lot of these are at the start or at the end. This one's at the start. You roll a d6, and you pick a player and you roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, nothing happens. On a 3 to 5, they get stomped, which basically means that they get knocked down immediately, and you basically get Mighty Blow +1. And you can apply that modifier after the roll's been made. On a 6, you kick them as if they had the right stuff trait. Basically, you throw teammate them. It says that no matter what their stats are, they get thrown as a teammate. The rules don't say. I mean, and because that this is their tree that they've been thrown, it doesn't mean that there's like a straight line like the kick teammate, which means that you can throw them anywhere. You can't target an out-of-bounds square, I don't think, but you can target the square next to out-of-bounds and try to see if you can get them to scatter into it, because it also treats the throw as if it was terrible, which I think means they still get launched.
Yeah, a terrible throw means that it's wildly inaccurate, so it adds both a d6 and a d8 to its scatter. So it is truly random
Nice undead
where the heck they're
cage
going to
you
go.
got there. Shame if something were to happen to it. Yeet.
Yeah. Exactly.
This guy is so funny. He goes into Badlands Brawl and Underworld, so Skaven get this guy. Blackworks get this guy. Can you say launching the opposing team's ball carrier into your Blackwork line? I knew you could.
Yeah.
This guy is so good.
And this is just the first of many cage breaking spells we're going to come into. But before we get through those Badlands wizards, we're going to talk about the sports sorceress next. And yes, there are sorcerers specifically dedicated to the sport of Blood Bowl. Now, like most mages, the sports sorcerer starts with a Thunderbolt, which is simple. 3 up, they get hit, and it has Mighty Blow +2 now. So something to keep in mind. But with sports sorceress,
Does that +2?
I think
this is +1.
Oh, just +1 for that one? Damn.
Yeah, I think there is one
Some
that's
of them do.
+2. It's not this
Some
one.
of them do +2. Okay, my apologies. But on the debuff side, much like the Goblin's ability to give someone really stupid and a 5-up, if you hit someone with the, was it Hail of Blades or Storm of Blades, whichever or, you can debuff a character for the remainder of the drive for their movement speed, their strength, and their agility. And this is yet another great example of to hell with those really strong war dancers or those killer blitzers. Just stop them right there. If someone has like a really specced out player, you can stop them at least for a drive and give you the breathing room needed to score. And I feel like they need to have more wizards like this moving forward that can punish just stacking one teammate.
This is so backbreaking for some teams.
Yeah.
Like that War Dancer going to Strength 2, AG 3. Ugh.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
so
big oof.
awkward. Like you're like a biggin, just knocking a biggin down to movement 3, strength 3. Like, what do you do with this player now? Nothing. Yeah. That's what. Or sorry, no, he goes to movement 4 because the biggins are movement 5. Right, but like, ugh.
Yeah, it could be a day. It could be a straight day ruiner for some coaches. But from backbreaking, we actually go to time breaking with the Azure High Mage. High Elves not particularly known for their time magic. However, next to their Thunderbolt, they have an ability that allows them to move the turn counter forward or backwards. However, it's only on a 5-up. So if you really want to risk it, this is for 150k. If you really want to risk it, there's a possibility for you to end a drive early, or at least put someone in a situation where they can't stall, or in your situation, maybe you can stall longer if that suits your fancy. If you want another turn
you
to
want
foul.
to style on them with Pile Driver.
Yeah, if you really want to style on someone, you can go for the high mage. And it's after any team's turn, unlike some mages where you have to wait till after the opponent's turn. Now, Ayli, what about the horticulturalists? I hope I said that
I think we forgot to mention that a lot of these wizards are special rule specific. So the Druchii Sports Sorceress is Elven Kingdoms and Favored of, which means that you can also, and on top of screwing over War Dancers, you can also just make a nice target for your War Dancer by just being like, oh, that ball carrier, strength 2, go get him, buddy. And the Aster High Mage is specifically Elven Kingdoms only. I gotta find, the Horticulturalist.
Yeah.
This is specifically favored of Nurgle or Underworld Challenge, which I think is interesting. But he gets 2 spells at 150k. The previous 2 that we mentioned were also, I think all the ones we mentioned so far are 150k, because they basically kept that as the staple price tag for most of these. He's got 2 spells. Vigorous Growth, which at the start of an opposing team's turn, before any player is activated, for the duration of their turn, there is a -2 modifier applied to rushing, which applies alongside everything else, which I guess is kind of funny. Like, this is really situational, but I have played in leagues where games are won and lost off of somebody having to take 2 GFIs into the end zone. So it's like, I guess if your opponent isn't planning things properly, you can do this. But I think the real reason you take this guy is for Strange Flora.
Yeah.
This is at the start of any opposing team turn or after any opposing team turn. You choose an empty square anywhere on the pitch and nominate D3 standing of opposition players that are within 2 squares of the target square. So you get like a big. You don't quite get like a square like the old Fireball, but it's pretty close. And you roll a D6 for each player. On a 3-up, they get knocked out. They get knocked down with Mighty Blow +1. On 1 or 2, nothing happens. So targeted-ish Fireball. Like, it's not as good as like old school Fireball, but again, nice cage, idiot. Nice screen.
Exactly.
Like, because this thing also breaks screens down.
Mm-hmm. Something also to mention about the -2 to the rush modifier spell. It's an autocast. You don't have to roll for anything.
Oh, that is an autocast.
So,
I didn't think about that.
It is the most reliant spell out of any of the spells here because you don't have to do any rolls to apply it, which gives consistency that you may need against higher agility teams or just fast teams in general, or even if you come across opponents that do rush often or try to rush into the end zone, it can come in clutch. I think it's going to be situational, but I mean, its reliability can't be unaccounted for. Now, the real mage I want to talk about is the Warlock Engineer. At 150k, he has Thunderbolt. Yeah, whatever, Thunderbolt. But he also has the Coup de Grace, which is Warp Lightning. Now, Warp Lightning, you target a straight line from one sideline to the other. Any player that gets hit, you roll a dice. On a 3-up, they get knocked down with Mighty Blow, just like you would Fireball. This spell, so long as it doesn't roll a 1 when you knock an opponent down, could potentially go from sideline to sideline, hitting everyone in its path. It's not going to do that all the time, obviously, and it's not going to hit everybody with a 3-up. But think about those dwarf walls. Think about anytime you've seen like a newer player or just someone line up a lot of players up on the line, or say they line a bunch of players up in the back because they scored and they just want to play their team safe, and they just line them up closer to the end zone. You can punish them for that. And while it's still 150k, it's still not very reliable, I think that this is going to be a mage to pay attention to, because the last time I used this, I was able to wound 3 humans, and the potential it has is insurmountable to breaking formations and punishing walls in general. And I know those of you out there who have had to play many a dwarf player are dying to have this kind of weapon available for when they line up on the line of scrimmage and wait for the blocks to come. And just zap them with this.
It's also worth noting the teams that can take this, specifically Underworld Challenge, which means that those are a lot of teams that have throw teammate. So, which I guess is like kind of relevant depending on the kind of cage that they built. That could be relevant. You can't do it in a diagonal. So, like, if it's a standard 2x2 cage, I guess technically a 3x3 cage, you're not really doing a whole lot with it. But for formations where you can open up a way to get to the ball, plus maybe hitting the ball carrier, pretty good. Skaven love this.
Yeah.
Poking a bunch of holes in the wall in a line for your gutter runners to run through. Pretty good.
Yeah. Not to mention, the Warlock Engineer is available to teams that have low-cost linemen. So think about your Snotlings.
There's a lot of teams that have low-cost linemen
and not just low-cost linemen, but just low team value starting off anyway. So they have a higher chance of hiring the engineer. So it is a mage that fits nicely into the teams that it's selected for. just like the next wizard we're going to talk about, which is the Fire Belly. Yeah, Ayli, if you don't mind taking this one.
So Firebelly is available to Badlands Brawl, so ogres, orcs, black orcs, stuff like that. They've got the Fireball, where it's the old Fireball. You pick a square, everybody in that square adjacent to it gets blasted. If they get knocked over, it's a mighty blow hit. But they also have Column of Fire, which is basically exactly like Warp Lightning, except it knocks people over on a 4-up instead, but it can't get grounded, so it's guaranteed to at least to go from sideline to sideline. Just on a lower chance of actually, doing anything.
Exactly.
I'm actually less... I know you're hyped about this one. I'm actually a little bit less on board with this one, personally. So, when I look at the teams that are taking this, it's... orcs, black orcs, stuff like that. So, like, with orcs, I think you're probably still going guard walling. So you already had a pretty easy access to 2 dies anyway. I think that this is a good way to open up the line if you have to make a play. If you fail to establish yourself past the LOS on your offense and it's turn 4 or 5, I think this is fine. Granted, your opponent's going to have the chance to stand all those players back up because it's always at the start. No, it's not. It's not always at the start, is it? Because it says that you can do it at the end of their team too, or at the end of their team turn. The actual prerequisites for casting all the spells in this book are there's so many of them. It's really easy to get confused. So like I could see it for that, like because especially since a lot of the teams of the Badlands Brawl are slower, but they're not in short supply of ways to just bully opposing players anyway. So like. When your team is getting bullied, you're probably not playing all together. If the bullying is working, you're probably not actually playing all together. So going in a straight line is actually a bit more annoying. I think that the Fireball is going to get cast from this wizard more often, but I think having Column of Fire available to you on a wizard with Fireball is really good. I just don't see Column of Fire getting cast a whole lot for many of the teams that have Badlands Brawl.
Exactly. Now, this is where we would turn gears and talk about which bias refs have caught our eye, but the simple answer to that is that they haven't. They simply have not. They are inducements that affect some of the foul rules and affect one of the kickoff events. And they don't really do much for how much they cost. 6 figures does not equate to fouling or increasing or decreasing fouling chances. It's just not worth it. Hopefully that there's a bias ref that comes on that will change this, but as for now, don't even worry about them.
I am willing to get I guarantee there's going to be a game between this recording session and the next one where I get rolled by a biased referee or something, and I'm just going to come on and be like, hold on, everybody.
We'll save that.
We'll see. These are really funny.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that they're bad either. It's like I have a friend of mine who is going to see these because that man and his fouling it's something else. I'm pretty sure that his Blood Bowl players use their feet to maim people more often than their hands, just based upon how much fouling he does by stepping on people. So he's gonna see these, he's gonna be like, yes, all of the yes. And I'm going to get rolled by one of them.
Now, on to other inducements, however. Once again, because Nurgle needs more things, we're going to give him cavorting Nurglings. Now, these cost 30k each, and for each pair of Nurglings, you get an increase in fan factor and cheerleader count, up to a max of 3. So, I think what they're trying to do now is give Nurgle, or at least favored of, a kit to work around for when they're wee babbies, and then, save off money when you actually have some, because I mean, a 30K increase in fan factor and cheerleader count could help them in the long run, especially since fan factor is, or dedicated fans, helps with your post match winnings. So I'm interested to see how well these Nurglings buff Nurgle teams and Chaos teams in general, and what they bring to the table.
It's very subtle, right? Like,
Yeah.
like this is not something to write home about, but it's interesting. And yeah, it's only available to favorite of Nurgle. I get it. All right, I might have to bust out the the grumbling glasses here. I get it. Nurgle is not a great team right now. And that's maybe putting it lightly. This was the one opportunity to give favored of literally anything else inducements and rules and stuff, and you just gave us more favored of Nurgle stuff.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, like, the only thing that you've done is made it so nobody else wants to play anything that isn't favored of Nurgle when it comes to Chaos, because you didn't give us a reason to do that. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once again, GW, your bias is showing. We know Nurgle is in a great place, but sooner or later, you give a toddler enough matches, they will burn your house down. And you are giving Nurgle quite the amount of matches to use. Eventually, they're going to become a team worth reckoning simply from the amount of kit that they'll have at their disposal for one of their matches. Now,
so wait, hang on. Is that how does that explain that other studio fire? Did you give the Nurglings matches?
no, I gave Corrin matches, but that's because they asked and they had Hellblades, and that's a lot more scary than Nurglings and their Nurgle virus.
Why do they need matches if they have Hellblade? You know what? Yeah, I think I would have given them matches too. I'm not really sure. Fine, just
Listen,
have matches.
When a Corn Demon asks for matches, you give them matches, Ayli, okay? I don't have to explain these things to you. Halfling Hotpot. Okay, so Halfling Hotpot is interesting in that I think you can take them for both Old World and the Thimble Cup. So you have them for Halflings and for human teams, or anyone that can include.
It's 60k for Halfling as opposed to 80k. And also, shout out to giving life to 30-year-old models that like people just meme about, but nobody ever uses.
It's essentially a cheap, inaccurate fireball. The only time you get this thing to hit the target that you want is on a 6-up. From a 2 to 5, it scatters and hits just like a normal fireball would.
Hang on. We should probably read the scatter because it's a weird. It's a D3 square scatter using your D8 scatter template. So it's a little bit different than the ball scatter. Don't think it's the ball scatter because it's not.
So it's more like the throw-in table, or is it just like it moves to one side?
Table. It's just like do a ball scatter, but instead of it being just one space, it's D3 spaces instead. Okay.
Now this one I know has the 2-up Mighty Blow, or the 2+ Mighty Blow on it, which is big. That's actually pretty big. For 80k, you get a cheap fireball that has 2 Mighty Blows, so it could change the pattern of a game quite significantly. But it still hits on a 4-up.
It kind of. It's not quite that. So if there is somebody standing in the target square, it is a guaranteed hit, and that is the 2-up Mighty Blow. As written, and when I say as written, I mean like separate paragraph and everything, and it doesn't mention this. If you're in the adjacent square to the target square and you get knocked prone by this thing, there is no injury or armor roll. It just says, additionally roll a d6 for each standing player from either team, so there's also friendly fire, that is in a square adjacent to the target square. And it's like, on a 4-up, they've been hit by a mess of stew, and on a 1-3, they've managed to avoid being hit. Any standing player hit in this way is placed prone. Period. Starts the next inducement on the next page. So, this thing is silly. Cheap fireballs, you get what you pay for. But honestly, like, I kind of want to see like a human team or an old world alliance team with a killer human blitzer like knock over the two guys on the front of the cage and then just like run in there and like pile driver the shit out of the ball carrier. Just the image of like this glorious pot of stew flying across the sky.
Yeah, it opens up a lot to imagination, just like most of these inducements. It really adds flavor, pun not intended, to the inducement roster. Next up would be Master of Ballistics. It's another interesting 30k inducement. It's essentially a better kick roll.
Well, it's 30k for halflings because there's a lot of inducements. They took the halfling master chef rule and kind of like amped it up across multiple inducements. So this is 30k for halflings and then 40k for old world classic.
Yeah. So
I don't know why, but it is. I didn't know halflings were the Empire's best engineers.
Smaller legs, easier to calculate the logistics of their kick, I guess.
Isn't that less momentum for kicking? I'm not a physics student.
So this would be good, say, for elf teams too, because I mean a better kick would mean better ball position, but you can't get them. So tough luck. Yeah.
This would be great on this thing I can't use it on.
Yeah. So I believe on a 1, essentially you choose someone to kick the ball, and on a 1, it doesn't kick. It doesn't like reside with them. They don't listen to the Master Ballistics at all. On a 2, what is it? 2 through 4?
It's a D3. So.
Okay. So on a 2, I believe it shortens the kick distance by half, and on a 3, it's a kick that scatters once.
On a 2, it deviates. The distance the ball deviates is reduced by 1 square. From D6 to D6 minus 1.
Damn.
And then for 3, you can add or subtract 1 or 2.
Oh, okay. So it gives you better ball control.
On either the D6 or the D8.
Is that before the roll or after?
After the roll.
Okay, so that's better.
So this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, there's some goofy stuff that happens. I mean, like, it requires your opponent to fail to pick up, but somebody's going to live the dream of this landing in exactly the spot that they wanted it to. Them failing, the opposing team fails to pick up, and you just yeet a halfling over, and he just grabs it and runs it in. Somebody's going to live that dream, and I want to be that person.
Yeah. Speaking of living the dream, next up is side bets. Side bets is, in my opinion, it's going to be either really an interesting gamble or absolutely game breaking. What you do is you can bet up to 10 to 100K before the match takes place, to see if you can double your winnings if you win. Or lose it all if you lose, of course. And since it's for any team and it's up to 100K, I could see a team that's doing well, say it gets matched, or it's like doing round robin and it gets matched up with a team that is performing poorly, just betting a bucket load and making off like a bandit with this inducement.
Yeah,
and of course,
Go on.
Of course, like as it says in the book several times over, all these inducements are optional. You don't have to take them. You don't have to incorporate them. Not that, you have to follow Games Workshop to the letter every time you run a tournament. But this is... I really want to see tournaments use this simply so I can confirm my suspicions that this is an absolutely game-breaking feature.
So the way that inducements work, per the latest FAQ, which if you don't know, an FAQ dropped a few days before recording. It's May 24th.
Yes.
So you should go see that first. most of it is putting into writing things that we just assume that's the way it works, but it technically didn't work that way as written.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, you should go check that out. Inducements are bought at the same time. So I'm not sure what that means if team with higher team value puts money onto this thing while somebody else is buying. I don't think that they get more petty cash for that game. With the way that
I don't
works,
think so
because you
either.
buy them at the same time, and it's based upon calculations made. I think before, like your petty cash is based on a calculation made before anybody buys inducements. So there's no like back and forth shenanigans going on with side bets, but this is so silly.
It is silly.
This is
But
like the
it's
ultimate
not-
trash talk.
Yeah, it is not even nearly as silly though as our next item, which is Heady Brew.
Bottles of
Heady Brew. Heady Brew is, well, let me just get this. If you like the acorn aesthetic, that particular squirrel of interest, you're really going to enjoy Heady Brew because now you can give players Dauntless Frenzy at the cost of really stupid and send them out for a drive and hope for the best.
It's 40,000 gold each, available to any team belonging to tier 3, so stunty teams. And it only works on at the start of a drive after everybody's been set up before the kickoff, and you randomly select D3 players with stunty. So this is oddly specific.
You can give a bunch of
so
stunties. You can give a bunch of snotlings drunk rage for a drive, which, I mean, if you're already paying snotlings, you're already doing it for the meme. But there is so much insanity with this. I really want to give this a shot with my snotling team. Because why not give them Dauntless and Frenzy? Why not? I have 16 of them on the field normally. Might as well.
It's just so funny.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Because halflings just don't have a whole lot of positionals that do something. So when I say do something, at the end of the day, all your halflings are 2 strength. Okay, yes, you have the trees. You got 2 of them. Maybe 3 if you're lucky. Is Deeproot Strongbranch still in the game? I think he is, or there's a different one now. But
there's a different one, but it's same premise.
It is Deeproot. Yeah, okay. But have fun with that. There's no Altar of Nuffle still. Spoiler alert. There's no weirdo stadium enhancement stuff. So you're not playing trash bag halflings or something, or trash bag goblins. So just go nuts.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of going nuts, we have to head into the mercenary section of our inducements. There is some interesting features that you can get with these new mercenaries. For one, you can hire different flavors of mercenaries. We have I can't even remember. Is it legendary linemen, brutal blockers, and reliable ringers. We're not even going to care about the stunty superstars because they're essentially discount stunties, and we go full price on those things nowadays.
Hold on, no, you're missing something.
What am I missing?
The stunties don't lose throw teammate if you give them, they don't lose right stuff if you give them a secret weapon, which means that yes, you can induce a throwable fanatic or a throwable chainsaw.
Yeah.
And I want to do this to somebody.
Yeah. The chainsaw would be your best bet, however, because the fanatic only gets +3 strength if you choose the ball and chain stunty superstar. So he's only a strength 5 ball and chain user, which is not good. If you're using a ball and chain user, you need to have that 3 die. Because 2 die on most targets, I don't think is going to cut it. Unless you were able to throw them. That's the ultimate scatter, because you have the scatter to throw them, and then the scatter for the movement of the ball and chain user.
I'm going to do this one day. I'm going to throw a chainsaw at somebody, and they're going to die. Anyway, that's the only notable thing to do with stunties. I mean, other than they're 30K. So like if you just want another player, go for it, I guess.
No.
But yes, I wholly advocate for using throw teammate on players with loner 4-up, because that's definitely what you should be doing.
All right. Well, besides our throwable chainsaws, I see in our notes here Mighty Blow linemen. Well, what do you do to make this build?
So part of the rule for mercenaries is that you can decrease one of their decrease their base stats to get money back to invest into the player. You can't make them cost less than what you pay for the mace, but like, this might come off as trash talking the edition, and maybe this is. Passing is useless if it's not a 2-up, honestly. I mean, I think the jury is still out, for me at least, for some of the 3-up throwers. But at the end of the day, you're not taking this loner 4-up guy to pass, so dump the passing stat. Pay the 30K for for Mighty Blow. You have a 6'3", you have a 6 movement 3 strength player with 9 up armor, so average, but they have Mighty Blow for 60K. That's not nothing. Like, I get that, there are more reliable options for Mighty Blow just on base team rosters, but this isn't bad. And then if you give him another general skill too, like, you can give him like Mighty Blow tackle, dump the passing stat, make it a 6-up passing stat. Okay, you spend the 50K on this, that's an 80K Mighty Blow tackle player, average strength. That's not nothing. That's pretty scary.
It certainly isn't.
You can give these guys secret weapons too, so kit bashers, lore writers, go absolutely nuts with making your mercenary players, because let me tell you, Anvil of Apotheosis has come to Blood Bowl, and I could not be more excited.
All right.
You can give him mutations! The possibilities are endless. Is it... Like, there's a few, like, very specific min-maxy builds for each player type, but... And like, after a certain point, it's super bloated and maybe just not worth it. But it's funny, and it's like, okay, at the least, it's entertaining and it's interesting. At its best, it's good or it's funny. I don't see the downside with that.
Yeah, certainly. But less on the more on the effective side, as we go on the brutal blockers, which are our 4-strength mercenary. The most important thing to know about them is that they're incredibly cost effective. It's 70K for a 4-strength, 4 movement blocker. Did they take? No, it's just loner. But this is kind of essential for the book and essential for chaos, because now if you lose a warrior to like a niggling injuries early on, you still have the ability, since your team value is going down by a fair bit, to afford a lineman with, not a lineman, of course, a blocker with 4 strength as a replacement for the time being. So it's not as damning as it used to be to lose a Chaos Warrior early on to a minor injury or badly hurt.
Yeah. The stat line is not quite exactly a Chaos Warrior, though, because I know that's a point of comparison that we're making, so maybe we should clarify that. He's got a 4-up agility and a 9-up armor, so he dodges a little bit better on the off chance that you're dodging with your 4 movement player to reposition them, I guess. But they have worse armor, so they have average armor, so they can't, their real protection is in their strength, so you probably have to protect this player a little bit too. Like, he might need a buddy. You can give him a chainsaw, I guess, if you wanted to do that.
I mean, why do that when you can just give him stab? Stab for 20K more.
Give him stab for
ridiculous.
For 20K, yeah, that's.
Oh, you can give him ball and chain, but then it would be 160,000 gold
for a 4 move. It is a 4 move. No, it's a 3 movement ball and chain. But it's, I don't know, it's funny, because also in the FAQ they said that for the first time ever, I think this is for the first time ever, players with chainsaws can make regular block actions. They don't have to use their chainsaw. So I guess in some weird universe where you give this guy a chainsaw, like, as just super expensive claw, instead of just giving him claw for 40k. Yeah, but you can do some really funny stuff with this. I would be interested to see somebody dump the agility stat on this guy. Because what is it? Yeah, you get 10k for every point down. For every characteristic that you reduce by 1. I don't know if you can do the same characteristic twice, actually, now that I think about it. It doesn't... Any characteristic may be reduced by 1 for minus 10,000 pieces. That's kind of vague.
Yeah.
So I guess we await another FAQ, because they did an FAQ after this book dropped and clarified nothing in this book. So...
Yes.
I guess that there's some different stuff that has to change. But, like, going back to the lineman, for example, just make him passing 5 up, AG 4 up. Don't dodge this guy out. He's got loner. Don't worry about it. This guy, make him AG 5 and then give him... I mean, you give him block, I guess, and then he's a 90k 4-strength player with block. That's pretty good. I don't think you can hire these players at the end of a game. If you can, that's hysterical, but I don't think you can.
Mm-hmm. So, next up is going to be our reliable ringers, and there is a ton of options you can use. There's 70 gold. Their base stats are movement 6, strength 3, agility 2, passing 3, and armor value 8. So pretty basic stats for like an elf. But if you dump the passing stat, which I mean, it's a 3-up passer with loner, you're not using that passing stat. You can get mutation options for like big hand, extra arms, 2 heads, and very long legs if that's your deal. For only about at a max 30,000 gold, which is great. You could improve movement for 30 gold each. There's a lot of things you can do. Some of the combinations you can have is tackle and diving tackle, or dodge and tackle. And if you don't plan on using this, yeah. And even if you like it is great to use as a marker if you find someone that's vulnerable, or it's just great for a positional. It's a positional that knows how to position and has the kit available to it to use its strengths.
Yeah, they do have AV 8 up, and depending on what the actual official interpretation is of quote any characteristic may be reduced by 1 for minus 10,000 gold pieces, depending on whatever that is. This player becomes a lot less flexible. I'm interested in the marker stuff. That's probably not what you want to be doing with this player, because I mean, like, dodge tackle is kind of funny just so they have a little bit of protection, but at the end of the day, they're AV 8 up. If they get punched, they're going down. But, like, you can also just dump 30k into this guy, give him MA 7, and now you have, like, a pretty fast player to do stuff with. I mean, what's funny here is that this player has a good stat line, but because of it's a mercenary, you don't actually want them to be scoring a whole bunch of touchdowns and stuff for team development. But I guess, I mean, late in the season, if you don't think that you can get there with anything and you just need to win the game, go for it. But this guy's weird. They also can't take Mighty Blow or Guard, so don't get any goofy ideas with with super dodgy killers or super dodgy guard pieces. As funny as that would be. Yeah. You can also give them Hypnotic Gaze, which is kind of funny.
But going from more serious builds to something that is just there to be funny is the Bonafide Big Guys. A Bonafide Big Guy is what it is. It's a big guy movement 4, strength 5, agility 4, passing 5, and armor value 9. So again, we're going back on the brutal blockers where they aren't as armored, so they're going to need protection. But I say forget that protection and look at their trait packages, which is some of the most ridiculous things I've seen in quite some time. If you jump their agility and passing stats, which I recommend because I mean the thing's 130 gold to use, 130k gold to use, you can give them Frenzy, Animal Savagery, Claws, and Prehensile Tail for 20k.
They do lose throw teammate, however. But
yeah, but you're not going to be throwing those teammates anyway, so have at it. And they come pre-built.
Unchanneled Fury and Horns.
Yeah, and they come pre-built with Mighty Blow +1. So
they cannot take the
like
leaders.
you can give them Ball and Chains.
Give them Ball and Chain.
Yeah, you give Ball and Chain.
Which is actually funny because this is the only bit because the Ball and Chain rule gives a flat +2 strength for mercenaries.
Yeah.
The mercenary rule is that they gain Ball and Chain, they get +2 strength. So if you actually want a fanatic, like an actual goblin fanatic, you have to shell out 210k. Because this is the only way to get to 7 strength because the other ones can't do it.
Yeah.
Which really tells you something about night goblin shrooms, but I think that's besides the point.
Yeah.
Insert like Total War Warhammer. Night goblin.
There's no way to get there's no way to get a good goblin fanatic out of this list. There's still fairly decent ways to get chainsaws out of this, which is good. That's a nice addition.
It's fine.
But
I think Helmet is available to every team, though. I've got the rulebook up next to me right now. I'll have to double check. I haven't actually read over. I don't find myself taking star players too often. Yeah, Helmet is for any team. He's 140k, and he has Pro, and he can use his Pro skill to reroll a single dice as part of an armor roll. So like once per game, he can do that. So like, it's kind of funny. Go with me on this.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to see for mercenaries. I want to see a league where the idea isn't that you are playing a team. The idea is that you have a custom mercenary that is your player character, and every week they are playing for a different team.
Oh boy.
Like that is your league premise, is that it's a round robin, but like it's just you going around playing for different. It's Mountain Blade, but mercenaries in Blood Bowl. You know,
Mountain Blade,
that's what I want to see. That would be hilarious, and I want to play it.
That would be.
I'm gonna go write the rules document
intense.
for this.
Yeah, but from big jokes to even bigger jokes, we have to sit down and talk about giant mercenaries.
Okay, he's 350k. You're not taking this very often.
Nor are you taking
Snotling's
this
teams
seriously.
And Ogre's teams can probably pull this off pretty effectively.
Here's the thing: it's movement 6, which is actually pretty impressive. Strength 7,
Once
so it has the highest strength of the game.
One dying that goblin fanatic.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Agility 5, passing 5, armor value 11 plus. So unlike the other big guys, we are looking at something that is not going to be,
Was the highest.
is not going to be bullied. Yeah, the highest.
Until he gets clawed.
And it has multi-block too. So multi-block break tackle. So it is a giant, and it has giant skills to go along with it.
Yeah, this guy.
However, the special
hold on.
rules for the giant.
We missed some of these. Always Hungry, Bonehead, Break Tackle, Juggernaut, Loner Fora, Mighty Blow +2, Multiple Block, Stand Firm, Throw Teammate. That is a skill and traits card, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But also because he's 7 strength, if he's multiple blocking, he's probably still 2 dying stuff. Or if he's just blocking like a random player, it's likely a 3 die.
Yeah.
Get him.
Now, that being said, he has 2 whole pages of rules you have to follow because in addition to his size, he's also the physically biggest character on the field in both height and width. He takes up four squares just by himself. He can only block things that are in directly front or to the sides of him, and you have to designate where those sides are. So it's like old school 40K tank rules where your not your armor in this instance, but your impactfulness is affected by where you're facing. And there's even rules for how things scatter and how the giant moves.
Okay.
And
so I am looking right now. I'm trying to find it. If this is more rules for giants than the Orcs and Goblins rulebooks had in Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
yeah.
This guy has lots of rules. He's funny. I love him.
He's a giant obstruction, so he when people pass, they take a -2 modifier. And one of the biggest drawbacks to a giant is that if you push any part of a giant off the field, he's off. He's just like a normal player. You don't make an armor roll for him because, well, frankly, no one fucks with a giant. But he has his disadvantages too, besides his ungodly cost value. But yeah, please be cautious if you plan on adding this because you will. If you're not prepared to actually do the giant off the get-go, you're going to be sitting down with some rules for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
They even have charts. Like, he has to have a separate scatter template.
Yeah, exactly.
He takes up 4
He
squares,
goes 12 ways.
Like, I love this. I think this is hilarious. I hope that this does not become a regular thing where there are multiple pages of rules for a single player or for a single thing. You know, like,
this is starting to get into like.
This is different than having multiple pages dedicated to passing.
Yeah. This is getting close, and I worry about this, as I think we both do. This is starting to get into like old school Warhammer days, where there is just too many darn rules. Like, yes, it fits the lore, it fits the character, and I mean, you play this game, you're in it for the fun, but I also want to play this game with people who are new, and I'm staring at 2 books that are littered with rules, and the rule density seems to be almost completely random in their application and what they're actually covering. So let's take a step back. Hopefully the next like rule book or whatever supplement they come out with is less, because there's so much in this book. Like, we're not even going to be covering sponsorships or some of the weather inducements in this video, simply because there's just so much. And it's not like these tables aren't digestible. It's just that there's so damn much. And unless you plan on paying attention to them, don't. Because we're talking 15 to 20 pages just in weather tables, and we haven't even gotten to the pitch selection or the random ball generator or even sevens. Hell, we haven't even talked on sevens yet, and it's almost we just hit an hour.
Okay, let's summarize.
We just hit an hour. We haven't even
quick.
talked about sevens.
It is exactly like how it's almost exactly like how sevens has always been played, down to the 4 specialist rule.
Exactly.
There's some newer stuff in. There's like desperate measures as an inducement or something like that. There's some slight differences, but it's nothing that you cannot learn after you set up the board, in all honesty.
Yeah.
If you are
and
familiar
not to
with
mention
Global
all of
2020,
the team,
you can play sevens.
and not to mention all the team rules like swarming for snotlings and others included can all be counted towards the sevens game. So you don't have to worry about your team specific rules to play. They are all included. You just go on from the get go, which is great. I highly recommend, if you're going to tell someone about Blood Bowl and they're going to play, get them on sevens first, because the sevens rules takes up like the very ass end of Death Zone, and they're easy to pick up. And if they enjoy sevens, they'll enjoy the remainder of the game.
Yeah, it's
So
like that is the most like lean part of this rulebook, and I think that part of
for
me is
good
like kind
reason.
of upset because
Really?
there was a decent chunk of like I don't think rules bloat is quite the right word for Blood Bowl yet, because Blood Bowl rules bloat would be different than like Warhammer Fantasy rules bloat, or even in some cases like 40k rules bloat. Even I mean Age of Sigmar is pretty lean. And maybe I'm biased in saying that because I'm much more familiar with that than I am with like 40k or fantasy battles. But there is so much crap here that some people are just not going to use, and I'm glad it exists because it's funny as hell.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's,
there were
that's
holes
also
in
the
the
biggest
rules.
thing.
Hang on, I'm not done yet. There were holes in the rulebook, like specifically the favorite of. I think the favorite of is the biggest one that were not addressed in this supplement. So if that's not here, where is it? Am I going to have to buy a third book filled with more crazy rules that I have to try to remember or think about when I sit down to organize a league or a tournament? Or that league organizers have to think about in general? Like, this is a lot. And I get it that Blood Bowl 2, like, as a video game, made digesting Blood Bowl easier just because you don't see it all in writing, you learn it from experience, but holy crap. This is a lot, and there's still stuff missing. When does it end? I'm glad this exists. I love this. But, like, this is a lot of stuff, and I still don't know why I would pick Favorite of Corn. Which is what I really want. Really what I'm saying is you need to give Corn something, GW. That's mostly what that rant boils down to. But
This supplement,
love the Giants.
This supplement.
The supplement, sorry.
Sorry. It's okay, bud. This supplement is only 30 pages less than the core rule book. I'm glad that they start each inducement set off with these are optional. If you make a league, you can choose what you want, and that is great. That's awesome. Because not only can you prepare yourself for what you want to do for a league, you can prepare others. You can tell them what is induced. But as you said, we are adding more to the structure of Blood Bowl with holes in its foundation. And if we're going to fully enjoy Death Zone, we need to patch everything that's in the core rulebook first, because there's still rules that people get confused on. There's still rules that haven't been cleared up by the FAQ, and if the FAQs are coming out at this pace, it could be functionally another 2 years before we see a Blood Bowl that people directly understand. But they still have to understand that they need to look at the FAQ first, and there's a ways that need to go before this becomes the game that I want to show to everybody. Because right now it's just showing to the people who are interested, and even then that's a bit difficult.
On a separate note that is entirely unrelated but really funny, I appreciate that they are giving life to giants that are still on square bases for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't think the round base actually fits on the pitch. I think it's too...
I don't think it would fit, because
the square base probably doesn't fit either, in all honesty. Or is there? It's probably a rectangle.
If it was an old school giant square base, it could fit.
When you say
but
old
then we're
school,
talking about
do you
old
mean
school
like
giants.
the metal giant, like put it
Like
in
the
the
metal
sock,
one.
and now I have a weapon for when somebody breaks into my house?
The one that isn't the bald guy. The one that looks like someone gave a Scotsman a growth serum and extra alcohol and sent him loose. That old giant. It's fucking ridiculous. We haven't been invaded this week because, quite frankly, everyone's too busy looking at the rules and trying to decipher what they want to use to get mad at us yet. But our send off is that to enjoy the game. The world itself is opening up in the the aftermath of Nurgle's Rot, and we hope to see you guys soon. Once again, I have to give my blood debt to Keyframe for editing these videos. If you guys would like to join us for one of our Blood Bowl matches or any of our Blood Bowl games, we have a Discord that we have links below. I have to say like, comment, subscribe because of the goddamn YouTube algorithm. Thanks, algorithm. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys again soon. This is Ayli and Josh signing off. We'll see you next time. You know what? I think we just need to talk about the fact and how bad it is.
Hopefully with more energy and less diving straight into it.
Yeah. But diving straight into it's what we do. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.